In the pantheon of animated classics, few stories are as beautiful or as beloved as Disney's Pocahontas. It opens in a world of breathtaking natural splendor, a pristine American wilderness untouched by the outside world. Here we meet our heroine, not a girl, but a wise and graceful young woman, the daughter of the powerful Chief Powhatan. She is a free spirit who communes with talking trees and animal Sedekicks, and who famously listens to her heart to find her destiny. Into this paradise comes the world of the European settlers. They arrive on a massive ship, bringing with them their guns, their greed, and their desire to claim the land for themselves. Among them is the dashing, adventurous English explorer, Captain John Smith. When he and Pocahontas meet, it is a clash of two worlds, but through their growing connection, they begin to see the humanity in each other. This relationship culminates in one of Disney's most iconic musical sequences, Colors of the Wind. In it, Pocahontas teaches the arrogant settler to see the world through her eyes, to respect the life in every rock and tree and creature, and to understand that his way of seeing the world is not the only way. It is a powerful anthem for tolerance and understanding. The story builds to a dramatic climax. John Smith is captured by Powhatan's warriors and sentenced to death, just as the chief is about to execute him. Pocahontas throws herself over Smith, shielding him with her own body. In this selfless act of love, she melts her father's heart, stops the execution, and prevents a catastrophic war between her people and the English settlers. She chooses her path. The film ends not with tragedy, but with a hopeful farewell, a promise that the bridge of peace they have built will endure. It is a story of love conquering hate, of wisdom overcoming ignorance, a beautiful, inspiring, and timeless fairy tale. It is a beautiful, inspiring, and timeless fairy tale, one that has shaped the perception of an entire historical era for millions of people around the world. And it is, from its core premise to its hopeful conclusion, a lie, a comforting lie, perhaps a well-intentioned one, but a lie that buries a much darker, more complex, and ultimately more tragic historical truth. When we step out of the animated world of singing animals and soaring melodies, and into the grim reality of 17th century colonial Virginia, the story of Pocahontas changes from a romance into a tragedy. Let us begin with the most jarring and uncomfortable truth of all. The Pocahontas of the Disney film is a wise, mature young woman, ready for a relationship with an adult man. The historical Pocahontas, at the time she first met the 27-year-old John Smith in 1607, was a child by all credible historical estimates. She was somewhere between 10 and 12 years old. This single, indisputable fact shatters the entire foundation of the Disney narrative. The story is no longer about a relationship between two consenting adults. It's about an encounter between an armed foreign settler and a native child, the romance. The central pillar of the film simply never happened. It is a complete fabrication. So what about the film's climax? That iconic moment of rescue? The only source we have for that dramatic event is John Smith himself, and he only wrote about it years later in a letter to the Queen of England. When Pocahontas had become a famous figure in London, his earlier accounts of his time in Virginia make no mention of it whatsoever. Many historians today believe that if anything happened at all, Smith, a foreigner with no understanding of the local culture, likely misinterpreted a common tribal ritual. He may have been part of a ceremony to symbolically kill him as an outsider and resurrect him as a member of the tribe, with Pocahontas playing a designated ceremonial role as the chief's daughter. There was likely no real threat and no romantic rescue. So if there was no romance and likely no rescue, what is left of the story we know? What remains is not a fairy tale, but a grim historical reality. It is the story of a young girl named Matoaka. Pocahontas was merely a childhood nickname who was the daughter of a powerful chief, caught between two worlds on a collision course. To understand her true story, we must forget the Disney princess. We must meet the real child. To understand the true story, we must first learn her true name. She was not born Pocahontas. That was a private childhood nickname meaning playful one or mischievous one, used only among her inner circle. Her formal given name was Matoaka, and her title was Amanute. She was not a simple princess in a forest. She was the daughter of one of the most powerful and politically astute leaders on the entire North American continent, Wahunsinok, the paramount chief of the Powhatan Confederacy. Wahunsinok was no simple village elder. He was the ruler of a sophisticated and sprawling alliance of over 30 Algonquian-speaking tribes, encompassing thousands of warriors and covering a vast territory in what is now Virginia. He was a brilliant strategist, a ruthless warrior when necessary, and a shrewd diplomat who had spent decades consolidating his power through both conquest and alliances. When the three small English ships arrived in 1607, and the colonists built their pathetic struggling fort at Jamestown, he did not see them as gods or demons. He saw them as just another tribe, a strange, technologically advanced, and potentially useful one to be managed, manipulated, or if they became too troublesome, wiped out. And what of these English settlers? The Jamestown they built was not the bustling, organized town seen in the film. It was a festering, disease-ridden death trap. The colonists were aristocrats and adventurers, woefully unprepared for the brutal realities of the New World. They arrived, seeking gold and a quick passage to the Orient, not understanding how to hunt, fish, or farm the land. They built their settlement on a low-lying, swampy piece of land that was rife with malaria and typhoid. The results were catastrophic. During the infamous starving time of 1609 to 1610, the colony completely collapsed. Of the 500 colonists living in Jamestown that fall, only 60 were alive by the spring. They ate their horses, then their dogs, cats, rats, and snakes. Eventually, they resorted to eating the leather from their shoes and, in a few horrifying, documented cases, the corpses of their own dead. This was not a world of adventure. It was a world of abject misery and desperation. This was the political landscape the real Matoaka encountered as a child. The relationship between the powerful Powhatan Confederacy and the pathetic, starving English was not one of simple hostility. It was a complex, volatile dance of cautious trade, deep suspicion, and sporadic, violent skirmishes. And into this tense diplomatic space stepped the chief's young daughter. As a child of the paramount chief, Matoaka was both a curiosity and a political tool. She was known to be intelligent, confident, and a favorite of her father. She would occasionally accompany delegations into the English fort, her presence as a non-combatant child, serving as a signal of peaceful intent. To the English, she was a fascinating glimpse into Powhatan society. To her father, her visits were a form of intelligence gathering, a way to learn the numbers, the weaknesses, and the customs of these strange, bearded men. She was not a nature princess who sang to animals. She was a politically significant child, learning statecraft at the epicenter of a historic clash of civilizations. Her childhood was not a fairy tale. It was a political education in a war zone. For several years, a fragile and tense peace held. Pocahontas grew from a child into a young woman, and in 1612, she married a Powhatan warrior named Cocoon. She was living her own life among her own people, but the English at Jamestown were still struggling, and their desperation would lead to an act of calculated treachery that would change the course of her life forever. In the spring of 1613, an English captain named Samuel Argall devised a plan. He knew that Pocahontas, now around 17 years old, was the key to gaining leverage over her powerful father. Learning she was visiting a nearby allied tribe, Argall sailed his ship up the Potomac River. He colluded with the tribe's leader, bribing him with a copper kettle to lure Pocahontas aboard the English vessel under the pretense of a friendly tour. As soon as she was on the ship, the trap was sprung. She was seized and informed she was now a prisoner of the English crown. This was not a misunderstanding. It was a deliberate, state-sanctioned kidnapping. Pocahontas was taken back to the Jamestown area and held as a high-value hostage for over a year. She was imprisoned by the English. The terms of her release were clear. Her father, Chief Wahansanak, had to return all English prisoners he held, hand over all stolen English weapons, and provide a large tribute of corn. Her father, devastated but also a shrewd political leader, sent back some of the prisoners but refused to meet all the demands, leading to a long, tense standoff. With his daughter's life hanging in the balance, during her long captivity, a significant transformation was forced upon her. She was placed under the tutelage of an English minister who began to instruct her in the tenets of Christianity. We will never know what she truly thought or felt, whether her conversion was genuine, a survival tactic, or the result of psychological pressure after a year in captivity. But in 1614, she was baptized and renounced her Powhatan faith, taking the new Christian name of Rebecca. It was also during this time that she caught the attention of a prominent and ambitious English colonist, a widower named John Rolfe. Rolfe was the man who had revolutionized the Virginia economy by cultivating a new, sweeter strain of tobacco. He wrote a long letter to the governor, professing his love for Pocahontas. But the letter reads more like a political and religious justification than a love letter. He speaks of his desire to save her savage soul. The marriage was quickly approved. It was the perfect political solution for the English. It was not a romance. It was a strategic alliance. Her marriage to a prominent Englishman would symbolize the submission of the native people to English authority and the Christian faith. For Pocahontas, it may have been the only path to freedom from her captivity. In April 1614, as a condition of a fragile new peace, Matoaka, now known as Rebecca, married John Rolfe. The hostage had become a wife. Her marriage brought a fragile peace to Virginia, but Pocahontas's role as a political pawn was far from over. In 1616, the Virginia Company of London, the joint stock corporation that funded the colony, had an idea. The Jamestown settlement was still a financial disaster, and they needed to attract new investors and more colonists. They decided to bring Pocahontas, now Rebecca Rolfe, and her young son to England. This was not an honorary trip for visiting royalty. This was a marketing campaign. She was paraded through London as a living advertisement for the colonial project. She was dressed in stiff, elaborate English clothing, presented at court, and her portrait was engraved with the title Matoaka, alias Rebecca, daughter of the most powerful prince of the Powhatan Empire of Virginia. Her presence was living proof, they argued, that the native people were not irredeemable savages, but could be tamed, converted, and civilized. She was the successful product of their colonial investment, a symbol designed to assuage the consciences and open the wallets of the English public. While in London, she had a final, shocking encounter. For years, she had been led to believe that her childhood acquaintance, Captain John Smith, had died. But he was alive and living in London. A meeting was arranged. According to Smith's own writings, it was not a happy reunion. Pocahontas was reportedly so overwhelmed and furious at his deception that she turned away from him and hid her face, refusing to speak for several hours. When she finally did speak, she rebuked him, asking why he had broken his promises to her father. It was a brief, awkward, and painful final chapter to their story. But the real enemy was the English environment itself. The cold, damp, and polluted air of 17th century London was a world away from the open forests of her homeland. Her health began to fail rapidly. In March of 1617, as the Rolfes began their voyage back to Virginia, she became gravely ill. The ship had not even left the mouth of the River Thames when she had to be brought ashore. There, in the bleak port town of Gravesend, at the age of just 20 or 21, Matoaka, the daughter of the great chief Wahansanak, died of an unknown disease, likely pneumonia or tuberculosis. She was buried in an English churchyard, thousands of miles from her people and her home. The Disney film ends with a hopeful wave goodbye as John Smith sails away. The real story ends with a young woman kidnapped from her home, used as a political pawn, rebranded for a marketing tour, and left to die in a foreign land. Her story is not a fairy tale romance. It is one of the first and most tragic founding stories of the American colonial experience. A cautionary tale of a life caught and ultimately crushed in the collision of two worlds. The fairy tale is beautiful, but the truth is more important. If you believe in uncovering the true stories of history, no matter how uncomfortable, subscribe to the Black Chronicle and activate notifications. We have a question for you. What does it mean when a culture chooses to replace a tragic history with a comforting fantasy? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.